Hello and welcome. We're on a mission to explore and document 100 Colorado communities, and this month we went to Denver. Today I'll explain the history and geography of Denver, as well as what we learned and what to expect if you go there. Let's get started. The history of Denver is well documented. I'll try to keep it brief, but I found a lot of information. In July 1858, Green Russell and Sam Bates found gold near the confluence of the Little Dry Creek and the South Platte River. When word spread, hundreds of prospectors moved to the area, starting the Colorado Gold Rush. Before this, Colorado was basically no man's land and was only wagon accessible through the southeast corner using the Santa Fe Trail. By September, the town of Montana City was settled just north of modern-day Inglewood. Gold along this part of the river was quickly exhausted, and within weeks, Montana City was abandoned for a new town called St. Charles, which was 7 miles north at the Cherry Creek confluence. St. Charles became surrounded by claims and quickly maxed out its available space. This led to the creation of Auraria in October as a sort of residential overflow. In November, General Larimer and Captain Cox met with Kansas Governor James Denver to purchase land and make a claim. He was shown Auraria, which he quickly refused. Instead, he took over St. Charles and renamed it Denver City for the governor. As winter faded, Denver City lost a large amount of residents when the miners left the banks of the South Platte looking for more lucrative claims in the mountains. Seeking better accessibility to stay relevant, the town donated lots to the Leavenworth and Pikes Peak Express, allowing the completion of the first wagon road directly to town. That October, as the town stabilized, an election was held to form a provincial government for western Kansas Territory. This eventually led to the creation of Colorado Territory 2 years later. Lincoln himself appointed William Gilpin as the first governor, and the territory was divided into 17 counties, with Denver City as the seat. Denver City's early years included several unfortunate events. In 1863, a fire broke out downtown that destroyed dozens of buildings. 13 months later, heavy rains during the spring snowmelt flooded the South Platte and its tributaries, leading to heavy destruction. The Native Americans were also deported that year following the Sand Creek Massacre. Finally, in 1865, a large grasshopper swarm destroyed all local vegetation, leading to very high prices in the area for the next year. After overcoming these challenges, things began looking up. In 1867, Denver became the official capital of Colorado Territory and dropped the word city from their name. Construction of Colorado's first rail line began the following year and was completed in 1870. The first train arrived in Denver from Cheyenne on June 24th. 2 months later, the line to Kansas was completed. Denver's population was 4,700 at the census, but this number exploded with the addition of the railroad. In 1876, Denver became the unofficial state capital when Colorado was inducted into the Union. The 1880 census shows Denver having a population of 35,000, a massive 385% increase over the past decade. In 1881, Denver officially became the capital of Colorado, and amenities were built to continue marketing the area to newcomers, including the Tabor Grand Opera House and Union Station. The economy in the 1880s centered around logistics. Denver's location was ideal to store and move goods not only into the mountains for mining, but west to San Francisco and east to Chicago. Denver's population tripled again in 1890, making it the 26th largest city in America at the time and the 5th largest west of the Mississippi. Colorado legalized women's suffrage in 1893. Shortly after, silver prices tanked, sparking the Great Panic. With the local economy influenced by the silver mines, many banks and businesses were forced to close. Luckily, Cripple Creek had just started its gold boom, which offered a way out for many affected. In 1894, the Colorado Capitol building was completed. Colorado's entire government was then reformed to remove those shielding brothels, gambling, and other corruption. Denver's city government was amended too, dividing the mayor's power into 6 different departments. The 20th century started strong with a population of 134,000. In 1902, it was decided that the new mayoral system was only complicating decisions, so the Denver City Council voted to leave Arapahoe County and become a home rule city county. In 1904, new Mayor Robert Speer started his term by introducing dozens of new projects for the city, including an auditorium, civic center, and the Museum of Nature and Science. 2 years later, the Western Stock Show was created to advertise Colorado's livestock and agriculture production. Denver did its part during World War I by enrolling children in programs to help free up adults in the workforce. Several nearby mines were also opened to supply the war effort. During the Roaring '20s, Denver reached a city population of 250,000 people with another 100,000 in the surrounding communities. Eyes turned from the war to social issues, and at the time Colorado had become a haven for the KKK. It was therefore controversial when Benjamin Stapleton was elected mayor of Denver and Clarence Morley as governor of Colorado when they were both active Klan members. Stapleton managed 5 terms as mayor. Morley's time in office, however, occurred during the Prohibition and was riddled with scandal. He was not re-elected, and the KKK never again saw this amount of political relevance. In 1929, the Denver Municipal Airport opened with 4 gravel runways. Then came the Great Depression, which hit Denver hard, but Roosevelt's New Deal brought lots of jobs, including historic building surveys and new schools and infrastructure. Auto transportation was greatly improved with the paving of US 85-87, among dozens of other roadworks. In 1934, both the introduction of the Zephyr diesel train and the completion of the Moffett Tunnel shortened travel time so much that Denver cemented its future as the transportation capital of the region, beating out Cheyenne and Pueblo. Denver's diverse economy helped the transition from coal to natural gas. While many Colorado towns suffered through decline, Denver just kept getting bigger. In the 1940s, Denver once again put efforts in place to help support the country during World War II. Its inland location made it an unlikely target for attack, so naturally the government built several facilities in the area, including the Rocky Mount Arsenal, Buckley Air Force Base, and the Denver Ordnance Plant. Other important facilities constructed this decade include the Atomic Energy Commission, the National Center for Atmospheric Research, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology. After the war, many veterans chose to stay in the area, and the sudden population increase supported the growth of dozens of new plants, warehouses, and corporations. Many of Denver's suburban neighborhoods were built in the 1950s. Victorian homes at the time were considered outdated, and many were destroyed to make way for new construction. Denver schools were officially desegregated in 1969. Denver was already home to many different oil and gas companies, but the gas crisis of the 70s increased this. Downtown experienced a skyscraper boom with dozens of new office buildings going up to support the increased production. The Denver Technical Center was constructed near Inglewood to further accommodate the need for office space. With plenty of room to grow outwards, it wasn't a surprise when Denver became the car capital of the world. Nowhere else had as many cars per capita as the Mile High City did in the 70s, and all the traffic from these cars would often create large smog clouds over the town. Trying to combat this, RTD took over Denver's public transit system in 1974 and began revitalizing it to reduce traffic. Denver also refused the 1976 Winter Olympics for fears it would damage the local landscape. When oil prices returned to normal in the early 80s, many people were laid off, causing a local recession. In 1983, trying to rejuvenate Denver, Mayor Pena introduced a plan to once again add new amenities, including a new airport, convention center, and baseball stadium. This passed and construction began. These projects became reality starting with the opening of the convention center in 1990, then the first line of the new light rail network in 1994. Denver International Airport, Coors Field, and Elitch Gardens theme park all opened over the next year. Finally, Ball Arena opened in 99 and Empower Field in 01, which completed the overhaul. Denver played a huge role in the 90s tech boom, which brought in lots of high-paying jobs. Construction of cookie-cutter suburban neighborhoods exploded, causing massive urban sprawl, and opponents quickly pointed out how expansive and congested the city was becoming. The state responded with road improvements such as the T-Rex project, but a permanent solution still hasn't really been found. Denver entered the 2000s as both a global and domestic powerhouse. All different nationalities and industries have been able to find success here, everything from banking and agriculture to logistics and art. Denver was also able to avoid the worst of the 2008 recession by maintaining such steady growth that the economy was simply unable to slow down. Marijuana was legalized in Colorado in 2013, and now many are calling Denver the new cannabis capital of the world. Tourism and opportunity bring people into Denver, and the great culture and climate keep them from leaving. The future of Denver includes continued population growth and very high real estate prices. Longtime residents despise this, feeling they have been outpriced from their own state. Transplants, however, and young people love the booming job market and still find Denver more affordable than other cities. Denver is known as the Mile High City for having an elevation of exactly 5,280 feet above sea level. Downtown sits immediately northeast of the confluence of the South Platte River and Cherry Creek and is the center of not only Metro Denver, but also the entire Front Range urban corridor, a megalopolis of more than 5 million people stretching from Cheyenne, Wyoming, south to Raton, New Mexico. The Denver Metro has always had the largest population in Colorado since its creation in 1858 and today comprises of 8 counties. Denver's nickname is the Queen City of the Plains, made popular by its inland location right next to the Rocky Mountains. The nearest coast to Denver is in Texas, 750 miles away. The geographic center of the lower 48 is only 360 miles east. Denver also has the benefit of being equidistant to both San Francisco and Chicago. The metro area is accessed using I-70 east-west and I-25 north-south. Other major highways in the area include Interstate 76, 270, and 225, US 36, and C and E 470s. Denver is serviced by RTD, which operates numerous bus routes and several different light rails that service most of the metro area. Denver International Airport is a major transportation hub, recently ranked as the third busiest airport in the entire world. Downtown is built on a diagonal grid system running parallel to the South Platte River. This provides excellent snowmelt from the sun during winter months. The remainder of Denver is on an organized north-south grid with arteries every mile, secondaries every half mile, and tertiaries every quarter mile. Denver is surrounded by these 1 square mile blocks that are mostly filled with suburban development comprising of single-family homes. The largest suburbs in the area, clockwise from the north, are Thornton, Commerce City, Aurora, Centennial, Littleton, Inglewood, Lakewood, Arvada, and Westminster. Denver is already one of the largest cities in the state geographically, but the entire metro area is roughly 30 miles wide and 40 miles tall. This massive size means the weather can be very different from one side to the other. Denver's official weather readings are taken at the airport, but this information is subjective because the airport is nearly 20 miles east of downtown. Generally, there's more precipitation and colder temperatures the closer to the mountains you get. Denver averages 17 inches total with 60 inches of snow per year. Although 300 days of sunshine is often marketed as a perk of the area, the city really only sees 245 days of sunshine. The climate is semi-arid with 4 distinct seasons. Summer days will warm into the low 90s, and overnight lows will drop into the 60s. 100 degrees is reached an average of 3 times per year, but can happen a lot more. Monsoon season typically occurs over an 8-week period from June to August, bringing daily, sometimes weekly storms like clockwork. These storms are usually short-lived, but powerful. On occasion, even tornadoes and hail can develop, particularly on the eastern edge of town. The leaves begin to change in October. Winter is mild compared to a lot of places, with abundant sunshine being the norm. Highs will warm into the 40s but drop into the 20s or teens overnight. The longest day of the year only sees 8 hours of sunlight, and though extremely rare, Denver can sometimes see the northern lights. Winter precipitation comes in the form of snow, which can fall as early as September or as late as June. Most snowstorms are calm, but blizzards and microbursts still happen, with several past storms shutting the city down for days. Temperatures will drop below zero around 3 nights per year, but in the past the area has experienced cold fronts, where entire weeks on end will only reach a high of -5 and drop lows down into the -20s. Snow melts extremely quick because of the elevation when the sun comes out. People from colder or snowier locations are often amazed when one day is whiteout conditions and the next looks like it hasn't even stormed. The average humidity for the area is around 30%. Denver's climate also attracts retirees who claim the lack of pollen and humidity improved their breathing. Others claim the opposite, blaming the elevation for making them short of breath and causing headaches. Most people still fall in love with the geography of Denver, as it offers both nearby recreation and amenities while also being naturally stimulating and well located. My wife had a work event that brought us up to the Denver Zoo on Saturday. It was after hours, allowing us plenty of time to stroll around looking at all the animals as the sun set. We stayed overnight at the Comfort Suites and Highlands Ranch, which was okay. The next day we made our way downtown. Whenever going somewhere that can be reached by the light rail, we use it. Our favorite station is Park Meadows in Centennial, which has free parking, plus it's conveniently located to the Park Meadows Mall. Trains run every 10 to 15 minutes, so it didn't take long to board. The ride took about 40 minutes and the train filled up with Rockies fans along the way. The southern light rail lines at Union Station are on the far west side of downtown next to Commons Park. Once we arrived, the crowd quickly left the train, walking towards Coors Field. The actual depot is 2 blocks east of the south lines and came into view looking great after having renovations done over the past decade. Union Station is in lower downtown, or Lodo, which has distinct architecture and demographics. Several of Denver's famous breweries are found in this neighborhood, and it's become known for having a vibrant nightlife. Directly in front of Union Station is 17th Street. Many of the city's most beautiful skyscrapers can be found along this street, which starts at the depot and runs a mile before curving east at Broadway as an avenue. We could see the rounded corner of the TIAA building in the distance. As you walk farther that direction, the architecture changes from brick and stone warehouses to tall modern-style skyscrapers. This is the core of Denver's financial district, intersected by the D and L lines of the light rail. Denver's tallest building, the 717-foot Republic Plaza, has a 17th Street address, and the city's most iconic building, the Cash Register, is found on the northeast corner of 17th and Broadway. There were a handful of shops open here, but nothing particularly interesting. Upon reaching Broadway, the scenery changed from skyscrapers to the open space of Civic Center Park and the state capitol. Before heading that way, we decided to stop into McDonald's for a quick snack, but ended up waiting 25 minutes for our order. Their air conditioning wasn't working, and it felt annoyingly cooler outside than it was in. Peeved by our McDonald's experience, but at least energized, we carried on, entering what is probably the most important area in all of Colorado. The state capitol, mint, and courts buildings sat adjacent to each other, and many other important buildings could be seen nearby. My camera turned off twice here for, quote, being in a secure location. The golden dome of the Capitol shined in the summer sun above us. This dome is coated with 65 ounces of gold and was renovated in 2009. It faces Civic Center Park, which has become the location of some of Denver's most famous festivals, protests, and rallies. There were more homeless in this area than on 17th. We turned west to 13th, where the Denver Art Museum came into view. Another of Denver's most iconic buildings, the Dam, as it's sometimes called, is the largest museum between Chicago and San Francisco. It's composed of 3 buildings: the original castle-like Martin Building built in 1971, the Duncan Pavilion, and Hamilton Building, both of which were completed in 2006. The Hamilton Building looms over 13th Avenue, coming to a sharp, contemporary point 100 feet above the street. We turned north and passed by the Denver City and County Building, which is famous for being lit up different colors for events and holidays. Colfax Avenue ran past us here and has been called the baddest road in America by Hugh Hefner himself. It can still be a bad road, just more so in Aurora these days. We crossed Colfax, taking 14th northwest towards the convention center. 14th was the least busy of all the streets so far and had more hotels on it than anything else. The famous Big Blue Bear looked into the gigantic glass wall while a train passed by. The last leg of our journey was to walk the 16th Street Mall to the playground. This mile-long mall is usually the busiest part of downtown Denver, filled with tourists, shoppers, and performers. The entire street is closed to traffic, allowing people to walk back and forth among the dozens of stores. For transit, there are bike taxis and horse-drawn carriage rides, as well as the free mall ride bus, which makes it easy to traverse. The best pedestrian-friendly feature of the mall is how long the crosswalk lights stay lit, minimize your time waiting for traffic to cross. Unfortunately, this year, several blocks of the mall are under construction. Businesses are still open, but we now had to pick which side of the street we were going to see because we were getting tired and certainly weren't planning to double back. We turned onto Wine Coop, which has a footbridge crossing Cherry Creek to downtown Denver's children's playground. We arrived to find basic equipment sun-faded from time. Luckily, there were covered tables, so we sat down in the shade observing. Benches surrounded the playground and 2 homeless people were sleeping on some opposite the park from us. The clouds were moving in and things were cooling down. Then 20 minutes later, one of the homeless sat up, a lady probably woken from the kids, and she flipped us off from across the playground. This didn't deter us, she didn't seem like much of a threat, but the tension was rising the longer we stayed, and we figured the kids didn't need to be playing with a woman like that nearby. Of course, it was a bit frustrating as we were using the city's amenities as intended and were made uncomfortable by someone else's entitlement. This experience, paired with the dated equipment, makes the Denver playground the least favorite of all, one we will never visit again. The walk back to Union Station was a quick 3 blocks, and once there, it was a short wait for a train to Park Meadows. It only took an hour and 40 minutes to drive home to Pueblo West. All in all, we really couldn't have had a better trip to downtown Denver. It's a big city with some big city problems, and sometimes you just have to deal with assholes. Really, the most unforgivable part of the trip was a terrible McDonald's experience on 16th and Broadway. I'd still say we had a great time. A majority of the shops were open, the weather wasn't too hot, and the foot traffic was light. We've been downtown several times over the years and have experienced both the best and the worst it had to offer, and this was one of the more okay trips for sure. Denver feels wide, spacious, and really not too chaotic like some other cities. Once you get off the main roads and onto the downtown streets, it feels medium-sized rather than the 17th largest in the country. I hope you enjoyed learning about Denver with us, and if you've made it this far into the video, thanks. It took a long time to gather and display all this information. Whether you've experienced Denver in the past or are planning to come see it in the future, I'll always recommend a trip to the Mile High City and seeing what it's all about. It's a place of both profession and recreation, and no matter what brings you to the area, you're going to remember it. Taking our personal experiences and opinions into account, here's where we rank Denver so far. We hope to see you next month when we change up the pace a bit and visit a small mountain town of less than 800 people. The 4th highest incorporated town in the state, made nationally famous by a cartoon that you've probably all seen at some point.
Join us next time when we visit Fairplay, Colorado.